大家好，欢迎收看全球瞭望，我是郭崇伦。我今天在美国在台协会台北办事处，我今天要专访的对象就是最近这2天在台北访问的美国国务院主管经贸事务的助理国务卿芮福金先生。Welcome, Ambassador Redmond, to be our show.
Well, thank you very much, and let me also say thank you because it's my first time ever on UDN TV, and it's a great honor for me and a pleasure to have the chance to address the Taiwan people directly.
Thank you. To begin with, your visit of Taiwan is considered very highly symbolic in terms of Washington consider Taiwan as a very important ally. But how important do you think Taiwan is for Washington, especially in terms of economic and trade relations?
You know, I think it's interesting that you use the word symbolic because that isn't actually how I see this visit. What I see is having the chance to visit our 10th largest trading partner. Okay. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Economic and Business Affairs of the State Department. This is our 7th largest export market for agriculture. It's our 2nd largest export market for agriculture if you take it on a per capita basis. It's, we have, when you think about the future of the digital economy, I mean, statistics are extraordinary. 90% probably of all smartphones come through Taiwan. Taiwan is at the heart of an important and vibrant region, and as Assistant Secretary for Economic Affairs, I'm here to engage.
But sometimes without diplomatic relations and also no high-level visit, especially not like Europe, this is the exception. We are sometimes forgetting how important our two countries has such a strong tie. I would like to take TPP as an example. I mean, we in Taiwan just cannot believe Taiwan has a lesser degree of market openness than Vietnam. And while Vietnam is on the first round of negotiation of TPP, Taiwan is not. Why is that?
Well, let me say that I think my colleagues in the U.S. government have expressed appreciation for Taiwan's interest. And we are now near the finish line. We are close to being able to negotiate an historic partnership. TPP with the 12 nations that are currently here represent 30% of world trade and 40% of world GDP, 50% of the world's projected economic growth just in those 12 nations. And we're working right now and we're hopeful that Congress will pass TPA, and we're hopeful that Trade Promotion Authority, TPA, will then enable a quick closure of TPP. Once TPP is closed, then the 12 nations can talk about who might be next. Okay. And again, America appreciates the expressed interest by Taiwan.
When you visit President Ma yesterday, President Ma also mentioned that he's hoping that the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, especially economic relationship, can take up to another level. So do you expect that after the first round of negotiations is finished, Taiwan is very likely to become a candidate for the second round?
I think that I can't talk about who would be in the second round because it isn't something we are really talking about. We want to close TPP and then we'll discuss amongst the 12 parties. But I can say to any economy that might be interested in being part of TPP that there are a number of things that any economy can continue to do to liberalize trade and open markets and better prepare themselves. But I can't give advice to Taiwan about TPP because we're not really ready to discuss it with anybody until we close the deal.
Before that, when Taiwan raised this issue, always we get a response from the U.S. is that there's a lot of things still you had to overcome, like TIFA or other kind of trade obstacles. And Taiwan had to show itself that it's really genuine, dedicate itself, want to open up the market. Do you think the hurdle is still there?
Well, listen, there are always issues. Trade is a very complex topic, and there are many issues between any economies on advancing trade. And yes, we have talked about beef and about pork as issues, and those issues are really symbolic of market access issues that we hope to resolve with Taiwan. But I think it's not important to focus on any one issue, because trade is broad and complex. But generally speaking, I think it's important for every economy to try to reach the standards that we're hoping to set by the creation of TPP.
One last thing before we move on to another topic. President Obama outlined the rebalancing of Asia strategy. Then how important is TPP play its part in this overall strategy, do you think?
It's interesting that you say that. I talked about how it's 50% of the world's projected economic growth. But it's often been said by American officials lately that TPP is broader than economics. Our Secretary of Defense, in fact, mentioned that he would just as easily have TPP over a new aircraft carrier, which is an unusual comment from a Secretary of Defense. But you know, what he's reiterating is something that, but when you think about it, it's not unusual, because he understands the importance that economics plays in national security. So John Kerry, our Secretary of State, has often said that economic policy is foreign policy, and foreign policy is economic policy. So TPP is very important to the rebalance, and you know, America has the chance with TPP to set the standards for 40% of the world's GDP, the highest possible standards ever negotiated. So yes, it's very important to the rebalance.